we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. More NBA team previews because I know that's what you need. I know that's what you want. And I know that's what will fill up your heart until training camp. It is, of course, Gerald Glassford. Thanks again for joining us. And we're on to Detroit City. Detroit Rock City. Here we come. I feel like I'm going to Detroit right now because who better to go ahead and talk about the Pistons? Good man indeed. Go ahead and check out what he's doing today at Motor City Hoops and so much more in the podcasting world. It is, of course, Bryce Simon. And Bryce, great to have you here. Thank you so much for stopping by and talking about the Detroit Pistons.
Thanks, Gerald. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to do this. I appreciated whenever you reached out, asked me. I have to say, I always love the little intro videos. That's some of my favorite things to look for whenever I go and guest on other people's pods. Makes me feel worse about my own pod. Like ours definitely doesn't match up to your guys's, but I'm excited to be here, talk Pistons and maybe a little bit of Lakers too.
No worries. I am not. I'm not a director Artur. I am not in grading. I just was cut a few things together, find some splices. There you go, and put it there. But I'm sure you'll come up with something much better in due time. Rest assured indeed. But I'm just grateful to have you on. Detroit. Let's head to Detroit. I'm always thinking to myself, RoboCop. All the good things out there with Detroit. Obviously, things are looking much better for Detroit, including the basketball team. The football team is doing sensational. The basketball team is on the rise. One of my Lakerholics crew from the Lakerholics.com website, as far as our friends are there, L. Rob lives in Detroit. He has spoken great things about Detroit. How good is the mood right now in Detroit about what's going on with a team filled with youth that is looking to take that next step?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot better than it was the first 4 years I covered this team, Gerald. So for your listeners that don't know, I'm not from Detroit. I live in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. I jumped into the podcasting world during COVID just because I love basketball. And one of my former college teammates had picked the Pistons. So my first year covering the Pistons was Troy Weaver's first year. So Killian Hayes, Isaiah Stewart, Sadiq Bey draft. And that's where I started out. So I got in on what they called the restoration. We did not call that a rebuild. We called it a restoration. And as most NBA fans know, it took 4 years to finally get through that restoration. New general manager, new decision maker, a few different coaches. And finally, we got to watch competitive, structured basketball that we could actually analyze, Gerald, which was nice. And so vibes are very good. As you mentioned, the Lions had a really good season last year. So lots of, I'm not much of a baseball fan, so I don't want to comment on the Tigers or hockey fan. So I can't comment on the Red Wings or anything else, but it is nice to have a basketball team that you're like, man, this is a potential playoff team. They have an MVP caliber candidate and some other really young, interesting pieces.
The Tigers actually are doing well as well, so don't want to leave them out of this conversation at all. But I will say for the Pistons, in a conference that looks to have the door a little bit more wide open than normal because of the fact the injuries that have happened to Boston and Indiana that should circumvent their seasons, almost create gap years in a sense for both those teams. A team like Detroit, which is coming off of actually a very strong performance against New York in the playoffs, they could take that next step and actually become that team that many people saw in Indiana last season.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see. I always fascinated to know what people from the outside thought about Detroit's offseason because there was no big name. There was no huge addition. I think essentially what they did was run it back. And I think the plan initially was to run it back with Malik Beasley and then make a couple other moves. And of course, that situation happened and Trajan Langdon had to pivot. The thing I always like to have people, to give people a perspective, at the end of the season and in the playoffs, the Detroit Pistons essentially traded out Dennis Schroeder, Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley, for Jaden Ivey, because he was injured after 30 games last season, Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert. And so, in my opinion, they actually upgraded what we had at the end of last season. It's also worth noting that probably hated Detroit Piston Isaiah Stewart, for Laker fans. They're probably not a fan of him, but only, did not really get to play in that Knicks series either. And he is an important part of this roster as well. Now, injuries always happen, and I know that's part of the game. But my point is, even though they didn't go out and make a huge move, I do think the roster upgraded in terms of Jaden Ivey being healthy, Asar Thompson getting a full offseason, because last offseason he had the blood clot issue and the late start to the season. Jalen Duren having a really, a rise throughout his season where he was playing his best basketball at the end of the year. Year 2 of JB Bickerstaff, Gerald. I mean, we were coming off the Monty Williams just disastrous season last year. Of course, it took them 30 games to figure out, competitive, consistent basketball. Who knows how they can start this season and build off what we saw last year?
Once again, I'm talking to Bryce Simon. We're going to go ahead and keep on talking about the Detroit Pistons, but you can find him each and every time out on Motor City Hoops. And also, as well, he has a side gig on a very famous Hoops podcast called the Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecini, one that I've listened to on more than one occasion for not only just regular basketball, but for you draftniks as well. Just a little tidbit right there for you guys. But Bryce, I want to ask this. The development of that youth, I think, is key to your season. The Asar Thompsons, the Ron Hollands, the Jaden Ivies, Cade Cunningham also as well. I mean, it starts with Cade Cunningham and him already being a top 20 player in the league. Can it get even better for him? Do you see even him taking even bigger step towards superstardom?
Yes, there's definitely areas of growth, right? Like, and ultimately he does. If this wants to be a real title contender, whatever that window is, let's say, to create a 5-6 year title window in Detroit, he does have to take, he took the big steps, right? From his rookie year to what we saw last year, that next, whatever people want to say, that 5%, that 8%, whatever, those steps are hard, Gerald, as we know, to go from what he was last year to true perennial superstar MVP conversation. But it starts with the turnovers that have to come down a little bit, and then continues on the offensive end with the 3-point percentage and even the finishing at the rim. So those are those little things, those little nuances of his game that take him into first team all NBA, that make him more successful in a playoff series, along with the defensive end. And I think that's the part of Cade Cunningham's game that doesn't get talked about enough. Think about some of the primary initiators in this league that really get critiqued for their defensive lapses or ineptitude or being a negative defender that you have to cover up for. That is not and should not be Cade Cunningham. At the very least, he should be a neutral defender for a superstar, and maybe it has the potential to be a plus defender. And that's what I've always loved about his game, is the potential for the all-around aspect outside of just the scoring and the creation and the hub of the offense potential.
So with that, again, the development of that youth is going to be key to your season. Ron Holland, again, Asar Thompson, Jaden Ivey. Which of those three players do you feel has got to improve the most, has got to take that next step in order for the team to take that next step as well?
I think the biggest spotlight is on Jaden Ivey this season. We'll see what happens, contract wise. Him and JD obviously are up for extensions off their rookie deals. We'll see if those get done. If you ask me for a prediction, I think Duren's is more likely than Jaden Ivey's. You mentioned Sam Vecini in the Game Theory podcast. Sam's favorite word right now over there is delta, and Jaden Ivey's delta of outcomes is just has a range, Gerald. Like, it really does. I don't think Jalen Duren's is as much, and I think that makes negotiations a little tougher for Ivey. But for me, now that Cade Cunningham has established himself where he has, Detroit's next goal is to find the number 2 guy. Who is the number 2 guy? I did a study over the last 10 seasons before this year? And what were the average points per games for the number one, number two, and number three scorers for the four finalists, two in Eastern, two in Western Conference? So 40 total teams, right, over the last 10 years. And the number one scorer was right around what you would imagine, 25, 26.
Yeah.
The number two scorer was right around 20, 21, 22. Who is that guy for the Pistons? Is it Jaden Ivey? Could it be, Ron Holland? Or do they have to make a move to go acquire that guy via trade? And I think that's why Jaden Ivey has the biggest spotlight on him is, are you the number two scorer on this team? Do you have the play style to be the number three guy if we go get a different number two? Or are you a sixth man? And that's when I mean, whenever I say Delta, that's what I mean. And so I think he's the most important evaluation, at least for Trajan Langdon and the organization this season.
But with Asar Thompson, obviously seeing his brother get a lot of the spotlight last season and coming into this season with the spotlight even more on him about a potential superstar status for him, I feel that people should neglect him and leave him far behind. I know that there are assets or aspects of his offensive game that need to be worked on and improved, but defensively, there are few better right now in the league than Asar Thompson.
I would agree. And again, not to continue to shamelessly plug the Game Theory podcast, we did a top 25 defenders in the NBA
Plug away.
series. Yeah, we did a top 25 defenders in the NBA series. Asar's probably higher on the list than most would expect, but he was right there in the range of like the second tier of perimeter defenders, like behind his brother, who is, he's just a different level. Like Amin is one of the best, if not, yeah, well, I'll say it, one of the best. Go listen. And so that defensive impact is huge for this team. And so I don't want him to be neglected in this conversation. With J.I., I'm talking just kind of like the scoring options on the offensive end. You could convince me that Asar is the second most important player just in general, right? But Cade, no question. But Asar may be the most valued player after Cade Cunningham currently on the roster because of that defensive potential. I think he has all defense level potential in his game. And then, offensively, just trying to figure it out, right? Like, is he, off ball cutter? Can you use him more in, screen and roll stuff, like in a unique way? Can he get a little bit better on the ball, Gerald, the way we've seen Amin get used in Houston at times? So figuring out that offense is important, but there's no denying his impact and especially just the foundation of what he does defensively.
So with that, and again, your team is really starting to line up with depth, which is obviously a great bonus. I'm seeing a lot of teams, the successful teams, building teams with that thought in mind, that very thought in mind, and not just front-loading teams, but building with depth, which obviously your team is doing. I mean, modeling themselves after Indiana and Oklahoma City. Both teams had depth that they could rely on consistently throughout the regular and the postseason. With that, you guys added to your rotation with Duncan Robinson, obviously a little bit more expensive piece as far as the shooting is concerned than Malik Beasley, but how much do you think he's going to bring to this team for what he's coming in for?
I think he's vitally important. Like, I just think he is. And I realize that may sound crazy to people, but they need floor spacing. Here's my biggest takeaway from what I've watched every single second of Detroit Pistons basketball for 5 years. And this doesn't apply to the Lakers, and it probably never will because they don't really fall into this. When you are a rebuilding team, you need veterans and you need floor spacing to properly evaluate your young players. I watch so many games, and I could argue seasons get wasted not because they lost games, Gerald, but because you could not properly evaluate the players, the young players, because there was no spacing and there was no veteran leadership. I'm not saying you need 7 veterans. I'm saying you need a couple adults in the room that are going to come in and out every game and show the young guys how to play, keep you competitive in games so you can evaluate your players through 4 quarters, and floor spacing so that way when Cade Cunningham uses a ball screen, he has somewhere to go with it. Or if he makes the right read, there's somebody in the weak side corner that's actually going to knock down the shot. So that's a long way to a short point. of Duncan Robinson has to be that elite floor spacer for this team. Because if you look at the rest of the roster, like Jaden Ivey shot 40% from three, but are we sure that's the level of shooter he is?
Yeah.
What kind of volume? Karis LeVert has some ability to knock down shots, but is that really what he's known for? Tobias Harris, same type of thing. All of a sudden, you remove Duncan Robinson from that rotation, and there's a little bit of like, oh, what's the floor spacing going to be like there? So I think he has a very important role for this team.
So with that, again, I wanted to ask this. Your team is full of depth in a Eastern Conference. I'm not even call it the Eastern Conference because a lot of people have been saying that, and that seems to be the day. But just the Eastern Conference, to my opinion, where there's a lot of opportunity for the right team to take advantage of it. I don't think it's a gimme that New York or Cleveland are going to have their way in the Eastern Conference. But I think that there are teams like Detroit out there which can take advantage of it. And especially at the fact if you stay healthy, you've got the youth that develops. Cade Cunningham takes that next step, and you've got a monster back there in Jalen Duren cleaning everything up on the boards like I've seen him doing. With all that said, if everything goes right, absolutely everything goes right for Detroit this season, where do you see them ending up?
Yeah, I think I would put them at 4 in the Eastern Conference, maybe 3. Like, okay, you said everything goes right. If everything goes right, and like K takes the little minute like improvements we talked about, JI becomes the number 2 scorer, Asar defensively, JD is the player that we saw over the back third of the season in that playoff series, maybe third, right? Like I think third still. I think you still have to give the Cavs and the Knicks their due love because they've done it. They've got into the playoffs. But then I think this is a team that can absolutely make a playoff run, right? Like that is dangerous when you have what potentially could be the best player in the series in Cade Cunningham. In my opinion, that always gives you a chance. And then if these other young players take those leaps that we're talking about, you're talking about a real contender that's in the Eastern Conference semifinals and is giving one of those two teams everything they want in that series. So I think that's kind of the ceiling of, okay, they maybe finished third in the East, and then now they're potentially making a run into the Eastern Conference finals because, things have clicked the right way.
Who would you want them to match up against better? Who do you think they match right now, looking at it on paper? Who do you think they match up better against as far as the two favorites are concerned, New York or Cleveland?
That's interesting. I would want them New York again, Gerald, just because of last season where that was such a competitive 5-game series. Like at the end of the day, all of those games were 6-game series. Where they just couldn't win a game at home for whatever reason. That was probably the most disappointing thing for Pistons fans, where they got a playoff win, but they weren't able to get a home playoff win. But all of those games were so close in that 6-game series. So I would say the Knicks, the Cavs one is interesting. Well, the thing with the Knicks is it would be if they would go too big or not. So because with Cleveland, with the two bigs, yes, they have Tobias Harris, but if there is like a hole in the Pistons roster right now, it's as a backup 4. And I'm not really sure how they would navigate defending two bigs because it's like, oh, Asar can play minutes at the 4. But if Asar's guarding Evan Mobley, he's not guarding Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland, which you want him to be able to do, right? So that would be interesting. The other thing is, I think the Knicks have the best defender for Cade Cunningham between those two teams with OG Anunoby. And so I think Cleveland would struggle in terms of like the primary defensive matchup a little bit more than the Knicks would, where they have OG and, even Mikal Bridges, even though Cade kind of works Mikal Bridges over in that matchup. So I'll still go Knicks though, just because I would want, if they're going to do this, I would want them to get some of their get back on the Knicks after last year's first round exit.
Oh, that'll be another nasty conference finals. That would be actually a pleasure to watch indeed. Absolutely. Especially if it goes back to New York, comes back to Detroit. Oh yeah, absolutely. It would bring back fond memories of the 90s for me. I could tell you that for sure.
Yes.
So with that, again, Bryce, I truly appreciate you stopping by. But before we head on out, a couple last things I want to ask.
Yep.
What about the Lakers? Where do you see the Lakers this season? You've got skinny Luca just finishing his time with his European vacation, so to speak. It came to an end, obviously, after their loss to Germany in recent days. But he heads back to the U.S., coming to L.A., his first full season with L.A. You've got LeBron, age 41 season coming up. Whether or not he still defies the odds, at what level, we'll have to wait and see. How do you plan it out if you're JJ Redick as far as his time, how many games, et cetera, et cetera. You picked up a couple of, as I like to call them, slow as far as high potential, low cost, high ceiling, as far as with of course DeAndre Ayton, Smart, if he actually comes through it and is just revitalizes himself, and also Jake LaRavia is concerned. So adding a little bit to a team that really needed some depth. Where do you see the Lakers falling this season?
Yeah, I mean, I have them right in that like 4 to 6 range. I have Oklahoma City 1, like most people do. I like what the Nuggets did this offseason. I think Nikola Jokic, I know we didn't win it, but I think Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world, and they have a little bit more depth on that team. And then obviously the Houston Rockets, I don't know that they get enough credit. I think one of my favorite quotes last year is like, we can't say the Western Conference is awesome and the Houston Rockets finished second in the West and not give the Houston Rockets a little bit of credit. And obviously they traded for Kevin Durant as well. So I have the Lakers kind of in a tier with the Timberwolves. I don't know what you said circumvent earlier, and my mind immediately went to the other team in LA when you use that word. I have no idea what's going to happen with the team across town. I don't even know where to put them right now. I liked that roster a month ago, and now that's just something completely different. Mavericks have their own issues in the backcourt. The Warriors roster is still incomplete here on September 14th as we record this. So I think the Lakers are very much in play for a home court team if healthy. I have learned I am not going to count out LeBron James being able to be a very good NBA basketball player until he gives me reason to think otherwise. I love Luka Doncic. I'm an Austin Reeves guy. I think Austin Reeves can play with Luka. I don't have concerns there. I like the additions of LaRavia and Smart I think LaRavia is an underrated defender in this league. I think Lakers actually, I have a video out if people want to go check it out on YouTube, kind of breaking down LaRavia's game, specifically on the defensive end. Marcus Smart, we'll see how much is left in the tank, but it gives you some potential defensive guys. I think the center position, right, Gerald? I mean,
yes.
Here's why I bring that up. I thought Dallas had created the perfect roster around Luka. You had a number 2 guy in Kyrie who could play off of him or play with ball in hand when Luka was off the court. And then you had these big guys that were perfectly situated to play with him in the pick and roll. Can DeAndre Ayton be that guy? Can DeAndre Ayton be that guy? And so I think at the end of the day, that center position is the X factor between him, Jackson Hayes. I assume maybe there's some small ball minutes with Jared Vanderbilt there. Whatever they decide to do is, what does that position look like?
So with that, excellent thoughts indeed. It is Bryce Simon. Please go ahead and make sure you get a hold of him as far as following him and get a hold of his great work. And with that, it's what I call the cheap plug time for every one of my guests out there to go ahead and plug away anything that they want. Obviously, you've got some very high profile gigs in the world of podcasting. My compliments to you on that. So with that, how can people go ahead and catch your great work on a daily basis?
So at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky, I got a Substack. You probably don't want to subscribe, but anytime the Pistons play the Lakers, go check it out. Cause I have it's my raw game notes. It's like 4 or 5 pages. And I just put it's not paragraph form. It's just literally, I type stuff out as it comes across, it pops in my head. And so just check those out whenever the Pistons play the Lakers. It's completely free. You don't need to subscribe. You'll get overblown with Pistons content you guys don't want to see, but follow on Twitter, Blue Sky, because it's NBA draft stuff there. The Pistons Pulse podcast. Again, you probably don't want to listen, but I had a recent really fun episode with my former college coach that we just talked general basketball. So you may be interested in that, Coach Jeff Jones. And I had a Western Conference preview with the Slam and Jam guys from the Athletics. So maybe a couple episodes that would be interesting to your listeners. And then the biggest thing you guys should definitely check out is the Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecini. We talk NBA draft over there at least 2 times a week. Gerald, thank you for that, for letting me plug all of that stuff. And very much appreciate you asking me on. I was really excited and always enjoy coming on talking hoops with fellow hoopheads.
I appreciate it. Well, again, for someone who is in so many high-profile podcasts, continued success to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for stopping by my humble little podcast. So I just truly appreciate it. And I did enjoy this conversation. If you can, if you can, stop by during the season. Yeah. And so we can revisit this conversation once again, because I'd love to hear you talk about how well the Pistons are doing. Because again, I like to see teams that build through youth and are able to go ahead and ride it into great success. And I'm just happy again that the Pistons are now a team that people have to be concerned with. They've done it the right way and are going forward this season.
No, listen, anytime. And I know maybe the draft isn't like, Lakers fans' biggest thing to talk about, but you need some draft content at some point. You want to talk general NBA, whatever. I'm always game to come on. Like I said, I enjoyed the heck out of this conversation.
We love the draft.
Okay,
This channel loves the NBA draft.
Let's do it.
Does not matter where.
All right, perfect. Yeah, anytime. You just hit me up and we'll make it happen.
Sounds good indeed. Once again, it is Bryce Simon. I am very fortunate that I got a chance to talk to him. I will try to get him back on if he's able to. It sounds like he was able to and willing to. So that part is great for me. Hopefully it'll be great for you guys as well. Hope you enjoyed it. This is, again, our NBA team previews. We made the stop in Detroit City. Where we go next? You know where we're going next alphabetically. So we will go ahead with our next shows coming up here in the future. But Detroit right now looking good. How good? We'll find out this season. Bryce, hopefully we'll get a chance to stop on back right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.